Went to school at Central Michigan University, had a pretty good career, played early on, played right away as a true freshman, and we won some championships there, had some good years. Went to the combine. That isn't really my strong suit, so that probably, looking back, is probably what held me back a little bit. And it's just kind of like, I think it's more of a mental thing than anything. A lot of guys, it's just like anything, guys that are fast, like running the 40, and then guys that, like playing football that might not be as, well versed in it or whatever. It's like, I was like terrified. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be, I knew that it's part of, getting to the next level. But I think, there's kind of like a mental block of doing it on a track like that versus, going out there and playing. So I went through the combine, did okay, pro day, all that stuff. And then the draft rolled around and, there's a lot of stuff around it where, teams will kind of maybe play games a little bit. They'll kind of lead you on that they're, we have a pick in this round, we're looking at possibly getting you. But as I imagine, there's a lot of moving parts in the draft for every team involved, and the rounds kind of slip by one. And I remember that I think Mel Kiper has like best available picks or whatever by position during the draft, and a couple of guys had gotten picked at linebacker, and my name kind of kept going up and up at linebacker. And I think from like maybe the fourth round on, I was like one or two best available linebackers according to him. So that probably, got my hopes up as well as my friends and family. So everyone was like, oh, here we go. Any pick here. And it just kind of, it keeps going. And then end up going undrafted, which, is not really that big of a deal. But I guess it was a little weird when I was a rookie because it was the year of the lockout. So there was nothing going on right after the draft. It was kind of like a mad dash for people to get undrafted free agents. I remember, talking with a couple teams, and the first guy I was able to actually get a hold of was, Coach Rex Ryan in New York. So, and then kind of decided that was probably the best move for me, and kind of went from there. Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously coming from, what would be deemed as a smaller school in Central Michigan, contributed quite a bit to that. And then, from high school, Central was the only offer I had. So it's kind of been a common theme, I guess. But I do think it kind of gets played out a little bit by guys that always kind of get all uptight about, teams passing on them and all this. It's like, a lot of guys, it happens to everyone. Everyone's got a little bit of a story like that. So it's kind of just kind of a part of the business. I think when I went undrafted, it just kind of led to more urgency in me knowing that kind of behind the eight ball, and I have to figure out what I have to do to make things stick. And I think that, you hear a lot like, well, you're better off going undrafted than, getting picked in the late rounds. And initially you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like you kind of get pissed at people saying that because you don't view it as true. But obviously, I think if you take advantage of your opportunities and play well and all that stuff, it ends up working better in the long run. I think when you're undrafted, I think my first contract was for 3 years, which ends up being better if you play well because, usually the shorter term, the better with it. There's some exceptions, obviously, but I ended up being able to pick my situation, which was huge. I don't know that the Jets really viewed me as like a true undrafted free agent. I was able to kind of get in there pretty early and play, which was nice. But obviously going through it and then seeing guys over the years go through it, you are kind of behind the eight ball. It's not the same situation as maybe like scholarship players and walk-on players in college, but it's kind of akin to that, I would say, because obviously teams invest in draft picks. They want those guys to play. You have to kind of know that within reason. And so obviously they are committing to you a bit being an undrafted free agent. They sign you and all that stuff. And they obviously, there's some desire to have you on the team there, but it's not quite the same as, if they take you in the first, second, third, fourth round. So it's, I do think it contributes obviously ultimately to me wanting to prove my worth and all that stuff. But you could talk to any guy, if he's a first rounder, they're going to be like, well, I want to justify why you guys picked me at this pick, and then all the way up to bottom of the barrel guys trying to make the team. It's tough when you're a rookie. Rex is an awesome coach. Mike Patton, Mike Smith, we had all sorts of, Bob Sutton. We had a bunch of guys defensively that really were great to learn from. When you're a rookie, it's hard to be kind of truly yourself because you're obviously terrified you're going to get cut at any moment. It's fun being around guys with personalities like that. Sometimes it's a little hard. Like Rex is a little sarcastic. Coach Patton is a little sarcastic. And it's one thing when you know them well, but when you're, a 21-year-old rookie and you're terrified, any move you make, you're going to get axed. You really take everything super seriously. I think sometimes it would have been fun to play with those guys later in my career because all of them are awesome guys. And I think I would appreciate it more being a little bit more comfortable. But I think part of being in the NFL and to be successful, you kind of always have to be uncomfortable a little bit, which doesn't always make for the most enjoyable day to day. But ultimately, it's kind of what pushes you to perform, I think. And then special teams was obviously a huge thing for me. And Mike Westhoff there was a legend. He was an integral part of me making the team and then me kind of learning how to play special teams because it's kind of a crash course. We had no off season, so we got on there for camp and he kind of took me under his wing and trained me and the younger guys quickly. And then into the preseason games, I'm very fortunate to have learned from him early on because special teams is the reason why I've been able to continue playing. And he was the guy that really taught me how to do it because I just wasn't asked to do that much in college because I was playing linebacker. It's always a joke, like the college kids will our starters will ask their coaches like right before they go into the draft, like, hey, can you put me on punt or something? Just kind of as a figure of speech. So they'll tell the pro scouts, oh yeah, he wanted to play special teams. We just wouldn't let him do it. So it was something new for me, but I knew that was the only way that I was going to make the team. So I embraced it, I guess. It was cool to have someone like that with a background like his. He can be serious how you would imagine that he would be just based on his background in the military. And then he also could keep things light with it, which I think is important in great coaching and leadership in general, because football is a pretty rough game as it is and stressful and hard for everybody and long hours for the coaches. So for it to be miserable all the time on top of that really takes a toll on guys. And Coach Ben was obviously a great teacher. We were able to do some great things on special teams. And he kind of continued on what Westhoff was doing, which was great, and built upon that and added his own flair to it, which was awesome. I can't say enough good things about Coach Ben. And he would have little meetings with us teaching kind of the young teamer guys, just little things to look for out there on film, whether we're running down on kickoff or punts or whatever. It's those kind of like extra things that you don't get from a lot of coaches because they're busy enough. And he was doing it when he was an assistant. So it's like, I'm sure those guys work crazy hours. I don't envy that job at all, but he was able to take the extra time, which looking back, it probably a little annoying for him. We would be like, hey coach, can you go through this with us? But he would do it. And I think enjoyed it. He may tell you guys something else, but it helped us perform on field, which is coaches are there for. Ultimately. And then over the years in the NFL, I think you run into all sorts of different types of coaching styles. And I respond best to coaches that are honest with you because some will kind of tell you what you want to hear and this and that. But coaches that kind of hold you to a certain standard. I mean, I've had a bunch of great coaches over the years now, and each one is a little bit different in how they approach stuff. And Coach Rex Ryan was an amazing leader to play for and kept things fun and interesting and a great defensive mind, and it was awesome. And then now Seattle, it's awesome. And playing for Coach Carroll is kind of a dream come true. It's something you kind of hear about around the league. It's like, everyone always wants to come out west and play for Pete because of how great of a guy he is and great of a coach he is. To see it firsthand now is pretty cool. And I'm glad it happened later in my career, because I think early on, if I would have been out here and then had to go somewhere else, it would have been really hard, because everything is just top notch in Seattle, and the entire organization and how they treat us. And I think Pete lets us be who we are and embraces people's individual personalities and doesn't try to put us in boxes or keep us contained or like to fit in a certain mold that he wants. And I think it ultimately shows up in how we are as a team. We're very close as a team because we are accepting of however anybody is and lets everyone kind of be who they are. I think the idea of leadership in the NFL is kind of tricky because there's not much that guys can say that is going to get you to run through a wall or anything. Everyone is pretty self-motivated and knows why they're here. They have to perform and all that. But just with him and Bobby Wagner and, the list goes on and on. The thing is how they approach every day and how serious and locked in they are with what we do. I've never seen anybody like Russ in terms of his focus, the day-to-day what may seem like mundane things. I mean, he's been through it year after year after year. Obviously, we've had some different offensive coordinators or whatever, and he's had multiple in his time, but like how locked in he is to every single thing is pretty astonishing, really, and carries over on the other side of the ball with Bobby Wagner. It's awesome to kind of see how those guys work. I won't say later in their career, but they're older, and it's impressive because he's from working out to the X's and O's of football and scouting reports and knowing every single corner of the playbook. It's very impressive to see firsthand, because it's absolutely surgical with Russ in terms of precision with everything that goes on over the course of a day, whether it's meetings or practice. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I never got confused in what this all actually is, whether it's the combine is just basically, we are paid purely because of our physical performance on the field, and everything else is kind of secondary to that. So I can be the nicest person and be able to communicate with people and, have good social skills and this and that, but that's not going to make me more money on the field playing football or more successful. Obviously, it helps, and you want guys on your team that are semi-decent dudes, but ultimately all that matters is how you perform on Sunday. And, I think a big misconception, is that we just kind of practice and then we're home, but the amount of meetings and stuff that we do is pretty staggering, I think, for most people, if they were to see kind of a printout of our weekly schedules. And obviously, that's not a big deal. That's what we've always done and how football works. But there isn't another sport that has the amount of preparation put into it, I don't think, as football. With baseball, you play a lot of games, but there isn't the film to be watched like we watch film, and there isn't, structured plays like we have in any other sport, which I think that ultimately is pretty much the biggest grinder for us, is the meetings and stuff, especially in camp and all that. I think everyone has an appreciation somewhat for the physical toll it has on all our bodies. Obviously, it's a pretty brutal game at times. It's based purely on your performance on your body and how you're able to perform. So there's not get upset that people don't care about you as a person or this or that or anything. But as soon as you kind of realize it is a business, you don't look at it as anything more than that. And I think that at this stage too, it is mostly mental too. It's the guys that can kind of compartmentalize stuff and then, not get too down, not get too high on with success, and are able to kind of have the same mindset week in and week out and keep the same routine and take care of themselves. Those are the guys that ultimately, I think, continue to play, because I've played with hundreds of really talented guys that if they were able to ever figure it out, I would be out of a job. So I'm, semi thankful that they don't, but you see it with it's fun to see it with young guys. It kind of clicks at a certain point. It's like, there's a lot of like outside noise with stuff with fantasy football and performing and this and that and being in the NFL. But if you can kind of hone in on what you have to do to be successful, I think that is the key. And the guys that take care of themselves, which ultimately leads them to being healthy, which leads them to be on the field more, is kind of, I think, the key to longevity in the league. And I think for me, kind of finding your little skill set that you can do well can kind of keep you afloat for a while, because even if you kind of like specialize in something, I even tell like the young guys, it's like, if you're a receiver or running back, if you can get on one or two phases of special teams, like it's going to be hard for them to, cut you, because that's may seem like a small aspect of the game, but when you can contribute like that and eventually kind of work your way, to be a starting running back or a starting wide receiver, that's huge. Because it's like, you look at guys like DK, it's like some rookie undrafted free agent receiver is not going to beat out DK for a starting spot. And it's the only way on the field is special teams. And the sooner guys get that, I think the sooner maybe they have to swallow their pride to do that. But ultimately, it's what's going to keep them employed. I think it was awesome. I think it kind of encapsulated the year we had on special teams as a whole, which was really cool, because we had a good group of guys that had played together for a couple of years. And I thought we really played well as a group. And I tried to teach the young guys as much as I can. So I kind of took pride in that. Obviously, it was cool to get it as a personal award. And it was just a fun year. Ultimately, the best off season I'd ever have. I was, excited going into the year. It was kind of a weird year. Everything was kind of shut down. We didn't have fans, but I think it kind of allowed me to focus on just football, because you don't have all the peripheral stuff that you normally do. It was rough not having people at the games and all that, but it was huge just in the fact that you work at something for a long time, and like a personal recognition like that felt pretty good. And it was weird getting it this late in my career, but it's awesome, and try to keep it going for a couple more here. If you would have asked me a while ago, I'd be like, hell no, because those guys, I mean, that's a pretty rough existence at times. And I'm starting to realize, because seemingly know more and more people around the league now that I'm an old man and see every team we play on, there's 2 coaches that used to coach me and 4 players that I used to know. But I do think it would be fun. I think I would probably only coach in the pros if I did it. I don't know that I could handle college recruiting. I know I couldn't actually, but especially with all the new rules now, I'm sure the constant, I don't know. I think like the constant barrage of texts and social media stuff you would have to, go back and forth with the kids to recruit them would be rough. Ultimately, you kind of have to tell kids how good they are to kind of butter them up to get them to commit to your school. And in the pros, you have the opposite, which is pretty nice. You can pick who you want to have and kind of go from there. So I don't know. I think when I'm done with playing, I'll probably have to take a year or two to kind of figure out where I'm at and what I want to ultimately do. But I do think I would enjoy coaching special teams. I think too, I would only coach special teams. It resonates the most with me and it's the most fitting thing, I think. So I think that would be fun. And you realize kind of too, a big thing too is who you get linked up with coaching wise. And, if I could find someone that I sync with in terms of, how they approach, how you prepare for that stuff. If you get in with the right coach, it makes everything quite good. So it'd be like in Seattle, it'd be awesome to be a part and help out, whether it be an assistant or a head guy. Special teams would be awesome. I think we're all pretty frustrated with how last year finished up for us, especially how we started the season. I think it was kind of a letdown for everybody in the building and, obviously all of our fans. From me personally, I want us to take a step forward on special teams and be, as dominant as we possibly can be to help our offense and defense. And pretty easy to do. We have really good specialists, which makes everything easy for us. And then as a team, I mean, we just have to take the next step. I think we have the players to do it. And it's just a matter of kind of getting it done. And we were kind of all over the place last year. And special teams is playing good, then offense is playing good, defense is playing good. Then, it kind of goes all over the place. And I think, just consistency and, obviously we have a really tough division. So it's going to be a battle. And it always is. I mean, the NFL, there's so much parity and, there's so much talent out there. You have to play great every week. And if we can continue to play well on the road like we have ever since, I've been here and well before that in Seattle. And then hopefully, obviously having the fans back here in Seattle will be huge for us because it's a different animal for teams that come out here and play when we have fans in the stands. So I think we're all excited. We have obviously a slightly new offense. So that'll be fun to see once it's really rolling coming up here in a couple weeks. So I think we're all excited and just ready for the season to begin here.